Hey, this is Rick Theriault, your Maine Real Estate Guide. It's early March here in Maine. I'm on location today at 213 Brown Road in the town of Oakfield, Maine. What I'm bringing to market today is a 12.9 plus or minus acre surveyed lot. It does have a small camp on it. It's roughly 12 by 16, but it's just, you know, we'll call it a wooden tent. It's nothing fancy, but it does have a small camp on the property. The lot itself would be probably best used for a nice country home site to build a decent home here in the town of Oakfield in a quiet country location. There are some neighbors around, but I'm here. It's early Saturday morning. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning, and the only sound I heard was a rooster crowing up the street a bit. And then I've got this little neighbor's dog that's kind of following me around, but just curious to what's going on. But anyway, we're going to check out this property. So without further ado, let's get a little closer look. So I'm on Brown Road, and this section of Brown Road is gravel, and it's today the conditions are. It's a little muddy here because we're getting ready to get into spring breakup. People do live out here year round, but if you're a person that wants to keep your car spick and span spotless every day, probably this is not the location for you. But if you don't mind getting a little mud on your tires, well, this might be a great location. So there are some survey markers on this 12.9 plus or minus acre lot. You won't find any paint on the trees, but there are some posts for the corners. This property was last surveyed back in the 70s when they carved it up into home sites of roughly 10 to 12 acres apiece. And this one here, according to the survey, is 12.9 acres. There's 411 feet of frontage on Brown Road, so it's fairly wide here at the street. It does narrow up in the back, and it's a little over, it's roughly 2,000 feet deep. The property rises up about 340 feet of elevation from the roadside to the back of the property, which is up on that ridge behind that you can see before you. And the property was logged pretty heavily last year, I would say, maybe the year before. And so this is not a short-term timber play, but what trees are left here are going to grow back pretty quickly because the soils here are relatively good. And that's what happens when you cut trees. You cut the bigger trees, and the little ones that are left behind, they grow quicker because they're not overshadowed anymore. So I'm going to head up over the snowbank here, put my snowshoes on. We'll go get a closer look at the rest of the property. So we started snowshoeing in. As you can see, here's my truck sitting on the road. We're back here. The cabin sits back off the road roughly 150 feet or so. This time of year, there's not much in the way of greenery. Everything's pretty wide open. But come mid-June, when everything starts leafing out, this will be a little more private location. So here's a little cabin. Again, it's roughly 12 by 16, just a one-room open concept. Unfinished on the interior, just wooden floors, open walls with some insulation, and a wood stove and a little bit of shelving. For all intents and purposes, a wooden tent out here on this lot. Just built on posts. Looks to be fairly level. Metal roof. Shed snow pretty good. You can see it all piled up around here. If you were to build a house here, you could probably keep that as a tool shed or kids' playhouse or what have you. I think this property myself would be a great location for an earth house, because you got this large steep bank that rises up several hundred feet of elevation from this portion of the property, where you could excavate and build a home that's basically covered with earth on at least three sides. And that would aid greatly in heating and cooling, because the temperature of the earth is roughly 45 degrees when you get down in there 5 or 6 feet, and it stays that way pretty much year round. So in the wintertime, when the air temperature is -10, the earth temperature being 45, doesn't take as much energy to keep your domicile warm. And the same can be said in the summertime when it might be 85 degrees outside and it's 45 degrees in the earth. It stays nice and cool on the inside. So heating and cooling temperatures are energy required to keep it hot or cold is greatly reduced by the earth. And I think that would be a great location for it. This lot, as you can see, has got very few evergreens. There are a few, but largely it's a hardwood ridge with quite a few different varieties of hardwood. I see some yellow birch, I see some popple, and I see quite a bit of maple. There are some larger maple stems up on the ridge, which that was a little bit harder for the loggers to get to and cut it really heavily. But for the most part, the stems are fairly small. But they're going to come back. You'll have a nice shaded lot in the summertime, and in the wintertime, the sun will be able to get to it pretty well everywhere. Fairly good sized lot, again, 12.9 plus or minus surveyed acres. .411 feet of frontage on Brown Road, a couple thousand feet deep, and really pretty quiet. There are some neighbors, but they're not rambunctious. This property is coming to market at $29,900. You got power at the street, a nice lot, good size, year-round access, great place to build a house, or maybe just do some improvements to have a place to park an RV and come up here and enjoy this portion of Maine, the Oakfield area, for the warmer months of spring, summer, and fall. Oops, I found where the snow had melted away. There's a little dug well here on the property. I can see a well tile underneath that slab of wood. So there's a little dug well, spring fed, here on the property that you can make use of. So if you're looking for a country home site at a great price, you want to take a look at 213 Brown Road here in the town of Oakfield. 12.9 plus or minus acres of land for $29,900. It's got a rudimentary camp on it with a little wood stove. That ain't much, but the lot itself is pretty nice. Let's give Rick Theriault, your Maine real estate guy, a call at area code 207-731-9902.